Well, I have a problem, as most of us do from time to time. My problem has to do with this idea of God's call. And each one of us has been called by God into many things, into different things, but one of the things that God has called me to do, very specifically, is to help people to follow Jesus, and help people to learn in what it means to follow Jesus, and to grow in what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And so, as I've followed that call, it's led me here to this place where I'm speaking to you all. It's led me to being a pastor. And sometimes I feel like, well, okay, that's helping people to follow Jesus. And sometimes I feel like, man, it's not really helping. Now, when I first heard that call from God, I thought, well, that should be simple. It should be pretty straightforward. You introduce people to Jesus. You share what Jesus taught about living life. And boom, everybody starts following Jesus. And that life should be simple like that, right? I mean, that's kind of what we think. When we get a call from Jesus, is life's going to just kind of roll out the way we're expecting it to. But that is not how my experience of following this call has been. So we're here on a Sunday morning. You may notice that your bulletin looks a little different. Instead of 7 fill in the blanks, you've only got 1 this week. And we're going to try just giving you 1 point. We're going to try giving you a bottom line here, and seeing if that helps us as we follow Jesus. Because the reality for me is that God provided the where, inviting me to call people to follow Jesus. But I've had to supply the will. Yes, I will do it, but also the willpower and the willingness to continue to push and follow Jesus when things get hard. In all of our lives, God gives us directions, things that we're trying to accomplish. But the road from here to there often seems challenging. And I know many of you all have experienced this because I've talked with you about it. You think that, well, yeah, I know God's called me to be a parent, but why isn't it easier? Or I know God has called me into this line of work, but why is it so challenging? Or I know God has called me into this marriage, but shouldn't things be simpler? The reality is that just because God calls us to something does not mean it will necessarily be easy. God is inviting us to supply the will. Now, over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at Jesus' story from the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus sets out to go to Jerusalem. He knows very early on that God has called him to the cross. And he knows that as he follows the plan that God has for him, it's going to take him to the cross. But he's committed to that where that God has called him to. We're going to see that the journey is not an easy one, even from the very first when Jesus sets out for Jerusalem. So let me read this to you from Luke chapter 9. This is beginning in verse 51. As the time drew near for Jesus to ascend to heaven, Jesus resolutely, you'll say that with me, resolutely. How do you say that? You say out resolutely. It's a big word. It's a good word, though. Resolutely set out for Jerusalem. He sent messengers ahead to a Samaritan village to prepare for his arrival. But, how many of us get, that's the first word of the next sentence after we set out to follow God. But the people of the village did not welcome Jesus because he was on his way to Jerusalem. When James and John saw this, they said to Jesus, "Lord, should we call down fire from heaven to burn them up?" And Jesus said, "What?" Not exactly. He turned and rebuked them. So they went on to another village. As they were walking along, someone said to Jesus, "I will follow you wherever you go." But Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens to live in, and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place even to lay his head." He said to another person, "Come follow me." The man agreed, but then he said, "Lord, first let me return home and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Let the spiritually dead bury their own dead. Your duty is to go and preach about the kingdom of God." Another said, "Yes, Lord, I will follow you, but first let me go and say goodbye to my family." But Jesus told him, "Anyone who puts a hand to the plow and then looks back is not fit for the kingdom of God." And so Jesus sets out towards Jerusalem. And the very first thing that happens is what? He's going to a Samaritan village. The Samaritans didn't really get along well with the Jews, and they certainly didn't think that Jerusalem was a place you should be going to worship. So they heard Jesus was going to Jerusalem. They didn't know this was at the end of his road. They just heard he was going to Jerusalem, and so they said, "You're not welcome here." The very first thing Jesus encountered when he set out on God's path for him was an obstacle. Now, the Samaritans were one thing. You kind of expect opposition from people that don't really know your call. But then we get James and John right there in the same verse. They've been listening to Jesus supposedly. They've been following him supposedly. Jesus has been talking about loving people, though, and they want to call down fire from heaven. Now, it goes back to the Old Testament story where one of the prophets called down fire from heaven. So they think, "Oh, we're good company here." So not only has Jesus got opposition from outsiders, he's got opposition from insiders. How are they going to say, "Yes, I want to give myself on the cross. I want to die on the cross out of love," when my followers are wanting to smite people? I like that word, smite. I just like that word. It's a good word, smite. God is not usually in the business of smiting. God is in the business of loving. And yet Jesus' own followers have become the opposition because they want to call down fire from heaven. And then we have these would-be followers of Jesus who all end up being turned away. And as we read the passage, you're thinking, Jesus is being a little harsh here. What do you mean you can't go bury your father? What do you mean you can't go say goodbye to your family? Jesus' point here is what he says in the very last line. If you set out to plow, you can't keep looking over your shoulder. Now, I don't spend much time plowing, so some of you all may have better gauge on this than I do. But I suspect if you're plowing like this, your rows are going to get a little off kilter. You're not going to be able to get where you're trying to go. The same could be looked at if you're talking about these compasses. You're trying to follow the direction laid out for you, but you're not looking at the compass. You're just looking back over your shoulder. You're never going to get there. And so this is our challenge as people of God, is to recognize that God gives us destinations. Maybe that destination for you is a family where everybody is worshiping God together. Maybe that destination for you is a certain job, or it's a certain kind of ministry. Maybe that destination is some of the goals that we've set for our food ministries, for example, where we said we want to address food insecurity in our community. And that's the goal. You can see it down there. But how do we get from here to there? Especially when the first step that we take goes awry. The first step that we take is a struggle. There's plenty of folks who will say, and I don't quite know why they say this, but there's plenty of folks who will say that, well, if you're just following Jesus, then life is easy. Life is good. Life is simple. And I'm thinking, do you even know what this thing means? This is where the Son of God ended up. Why is it that we expect following him will simply be easy? The first step Jesus took towards Jerusalem, and the second step, and the third step. They were all challenging. God provided the where for him, but Jesus needed to provide the will. Say, you know what? I'm going to keep going. I know the direction God's called me to go. There's going to be challenges, but I have to keep moving through those challenges one step at a time. Now, going back to the beginning of the Old Testament, we have the people who are considered the patriarchs and the matriarchs, or the fathers of faith. Do any of you all know any of those names of the people who are considered the fathers and mothers of the Jewish people? I know some of y'all know these names. Throw out some of them. Abraham. Okay, who else? Jacob. Isaac. Joseph. Moses. All right, I need some of the ladies. We got men. Ruth. Abraham and Sarah. Elizabeth. Elizabeth's a little later on. Now, what about Aaron? Anybody? What about Terah? Anybody know Terah? Terah is the exact opposite of this. Terah was Abraham's father. Listen to this. This is from Genesis chapter 11. One day, Terah took his son Abram. Abram was Abraham's first name. His daughter-in-law Sarai, which was Sarah's name before God changed it, and his grandson Lot, and moved away from Ur of the Chaldeans. He was headed for the land of Canaan. But they stopped at Haran and settled there. Terah lived for 205 years and died while still in Haran. He was headed for Canaan. He was headed for the promised land. He was headed for the place where God wanted God's people to be. He was headed there, and then he got somewhere else. Okay. It's good enough, I guess. We don't know why he stopped there. We don't know what obstacle was in his path. All we know is he was headed there, he got here and said, well, I guess this is good enough. I'm just going to stop right here. And as a result, instead of the patriarchs and the matriarchs of our faith, including Terah, we start with Abraham. Because Abraham's father settled on good enough instead of the destination that God had called him to. The very next line after Terah dies, the Lord had said to Abraham, leave your native country, your relatives, your father's family, and go to the land I will show you. And so Abram departed as the Lord instructed. Now, you can read Abraham's story and you know it is not an easy journey for him. But he saw the destination. He said, you know what, that's what God's called me. I'm going to head that way. I'm going to take up my compass, and I'm going to move. We're going to talk about Jesus heading to Jerusalem. And Jesus' path to Jerusalem is not just a journey where he's headed straight there geographically, because God has callings for him along the way, but all the way through Luke, he is preparing for the cross. He is preparing to lay down his life. That's the destination. And there are no obstacles in the way that are going to stop him. Now, I wrote one point in your bulletins this week. This is your one point. All right? To reach God's goal, go with resolve. Remember the word that described how Jesus set out? He set out resolutely towards Jerusalem. And if he hadn't set out resolutely, he never would have gotten there, because there were so many obstacles in his path. And the same is true for you. If you do not set out towards God's goal, whatever God's goal for you is, don't set out with resolve, you're not going to get there. And so God may provide the where, but it's up to us to supply the will if we hope to reach that place. We're going to keep journeying through Luke over the next few weeks. And as we do, my hope is that we'll see Jesus' resolve, how he is resolutely setting out towards Jerusalem. And I'll encourage us a little bit, because I know we all hit bumps in our lives. It's up to us to determine how we're going to work through those to reach the place God's called us to. Let's be in prayer together. Lord,